Hey guys, Mike is here with my first video of 2018. I recently played a tournament in Las Vegas, where I live, North American Open. I was playing in under 2300 section, and I didn't do very well this time, but there was at least three games that deserve attention, and all three of them ended up uh, being interesting endgames, which which are worth studying. And definitely I feel like the if you're my level or lower rated, you can definitely learn at least something from these end games. So there will be three of them in this series. This is part one. There'll be two of them that I won and one of them that I lost, and I want to start with the one I lost. It's a very interesting end game where black's gonna have a rook and a knight and a pawn against rook and two pawns. Okay, so the position came about like this, where Uh, Black just managed to threaten the rook roller mate with rook a3, and I had to play rook d1. And after rook a7, Black is winning the knight. And I'm going to show this game from Black's perspective, since we are going to study how to win this endgame. So White went for rook e1, trying to get at least the pawn back, and Black takes the knight. So here White has to decide whether White wants to trade rooks, and if White doesn't trade rooks, then Black most likely is going to double up on the second rank and bring the knight to f3 if needed, and will probably be able to checkmate White. So for White to maximize the chances of drawing this position, it is needed to trade rooks. And okay, here it appears that if White doesn't take the e pawn, that Black will be able to defend it successfully. So White has to take the pawn. And the very important thing that Black does here, first of all, is to play rook b2. And this move, hopefully, it's obvious to most of you, but what it allows to do is to restrict White's king from entering the game, and also gives Black a possibility of uh, a checkmate pattern where he brings his knight to f3, and if White's king is on h1, plays rook takes h2 mate. So we know that if White only has a rook and Black only has rook and knight, that's a theoretically drawn endgame, although there are exceptions, some exception positions. And also, practically, if I were to have rook and knight, I would still play on and try to win. And of course, as a defendant side, um, if you have no pawns, you have to keep track of a 50 move rule, and basically hope to hold on for 50 moves and then claim a draw. It becomes much more complicated when pawns are present. At first glance, it appears that if White could just trade both of his pawns for the g-pawn, he could be okay. But in practical terms, this is pretty much almost impossible to do. And one thing White needs to decide here is whether to push pawns forward and be at risk that the pawn's going to be lost, or to just stay put and play passively. So as somebody who had to try to hold this position, I can tell you that this is one of the most unpleasant things in chess, to defend passively, knowing that you're either going to lose or draw at best. But unfortunately, sometimes um, we have to deal with positions like this. Okay, so I decided as a White to just stay put, and basically I put my rook on the fourth rank. I decided I'm not going to push any pawns forward, and I'm going to try to cut his king off as much as possible, and then I'm just going to stand and do nothing. And basically, that puts a pressure on Black to find a winning plan. Now, objectively, this position should be lost, but it's Black's job to show how. And my opponent actually played extremely well and found the winning plan. So let's see what it is. And to some of you, it might not be obvious. I even had a couple of relatively strong players approach me and say, how'd you lose that? That's a drawn position, because they don't know how to win this. So let's see what he did here. So one plan that he has is to somehow bring the knight to f3. So how is that possible? So he needs to play the pawn to g4 and then put the knight in f3 somehow. And also try to bring his king while using his knight and rook as shields if needed. So we're not going to look at all the lines here, but we're going to look at what happened in the game, number one. And we're going to look at one sideline, which is by no means forced, but it's just a sample of what could have happened and how black could win this position differently. So I tried to hold on the fourth rank, keep pressuring his pawn, and at some point I made this move rook g4, basically attacking his pawn, and a player that's not attentive here might have just played king back to f7, and white is happy to repeat, white is happy to try to get to the 50 moves and claim a draw. We're only at about move 10 at this point, but my opponent very wisely decides to abandon this pawn, and now whether I take or not take, black's already winning pretty easily. So I end up taking the pawn, and he plays knight f3, threatening rook takes h2 mate. I can't move my king, and if I move my h-pawn, it's still a mate. So the only way to guard against mate is rook h7. Then what he does is he marches his king, and the goal for black is to get the king to f2. And once the king is on f2, black can play rook b1 with a checkmate. So I tried checking him from behind, and he doesn't take my pawn because he's trying to hide behind his knight, and he just gets to f2, and the game is over. So now it's kind of sad that I lost this game, but at the same time, I feel like it's a good learning moment. If I happen to have rook and knight, this is a pattern I'm definitely going to remember. So that's one idea. The other idea, what would happen if in this position, for example, rather than going king rook g4, let's say I'm continuing to stay put with king g1, king h1. So in this scenario, black is going to try to move forward gradually. Sometimes he'll have to bring king back and forth to not give a pawn, and then get his knight to e3. There is rook g2 check, rook e2, and then starts bringing his king forward. And then at some point his pawn will march forward to g4. Then he will get forward with his king. If I try some kind of h3 stuff, he will again try to relocate his knight to f3. Here he's threatening to play rook g1 mate, and if white takes on g4 and rook g1, king h3, rook h1, king g2, rook h2 mate from the other side. So here white would check to push the king out, and something like this. So one plan that black has, one winning plan that black has here, is to give up a knight at the right moment for if he can obtain a passed pawn which cannot be stopped, like in this scenario. So I thought this would be an interesting endgame to share with you guys, and I'm going to have 2 more endgames in this series, so be on the lookout for that. Please like and share if you like the video, comment, if there's any questions. Talk to you next time.